Okay guys, this video is all about perfecting your protein intake and making sure you get the most from the protein you eat to build as much muscle as possible. I mean, obviously, you hear all around the internet, the bros, that you've got to eat tons of protein to build muscle. Is that true? And how much should you be eating? Well, number one, a little bit of background. Protein actually comes from the Greek of primary importance, which obviously indicates how fundamental it is. Protein helps you recover from your training, it preserves lean tissue when you're dieting, and it helps you to grow more muscle when you're bulking. And it also has the highest effect on satiety. So in dieting, that can be really helpful. High protein diets can help keep you full and minimise the risk of you failing on your diet. So protein is definitely important, very important to your ability to build muscle. So with that information, you can see that, all right, it's good, it's going to help me, but how can I optimize it? Well, number one, eating protein stimulates muscle protein synthesis, or MPS. Muscle growth can only occur if MPS exceeds muscle protein breakdown, MPB. So with that in mind, MPS is arguably the most important physiological factor when it comes to building muscle. It's the driving force to the adaptations brought about by training. And essentially MPS is the rebuilding of muscle fibers that you damage within training. So it's, you provide a stimulus in training, disrupt homeostasis, damage the system, and then the body adapts through MPS to build bigger, stronger muscles. Interestingly, the research indicates that there's an amount of protein that will maximally stimulate MPS, and that eating more doesn't have an additional benefit. So that's the first thing is to address is just more isn't better. Eating tons of protein isn't going to help you build the most muscle possible. What we want to do is find that optimum amount, eat that, and then that leaves you a space to consume carbohydrates and fats to get the calories in and build the most muscle possible. So with that in mind, how much protein should you consume? Well, anything in the range of 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo has been found to be sufficient to stimulate MPS over the course of a day. Now, some recent research actually found 1.65 was a good number, and going higher didn't have any benefits. I actually generally recommend 2 grams per kilo of body weight, which is roughly the same as 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is the kind of number you see all over the internet. And actually, whilst you probably don't need to go above 1.65, I recommend 2 grams per kilo to my clients because it's easy to remember, it's very easy to calculate, and it comfortably covers your needs. And above all else, a lot of the people I work with seem to prefer eating that quantity, and adherence is key. So making sure that they can follow the plan by having 2 grams really works well. So, but with that said, going higher than this number, there's no additional benefits. And in fact, you're just filling yourself up where you'd be better off eating some carbs and fats. So if we moved on from the total intake across the course of the day to protein timing. So protein timing, you can think about it as there's two elements to it. So there's meal frequency, or the spread of meals over the course of the day, and the specific timing of the nutrients, protein in this case. And then usually when you're talking about nutrient timing, people are talking about in relation to their workout. So we'll look at the spacing of meals through the day first, and then we'll consider timing protein around your training session. So as we sort of covered already, maximising your MPS through the day should be your goal when it comes to your eating of protein. So you might be thinking, I just need to be eating protein almost constantly, like a drip feed of an amino acid drink or something. But actually, that isn't the way to go about it. So the reason for that is you actually having spikes and troughs has been found to be the best way to stimulate muscle protein synthesis across the day. Research indicates that it's key to maxing out MPS, and that trying to have those levels really high actually causes a refractory response. And so a refractory response means you become resistant to the process or the stimulus. So you become resistant to that stimulus of eating or drinking more amino acids, more proteins. So actually the MPS decreases despite you putting more and more in. So we want to avoid that. I mean, obviously we don't want don't want to have that refractory response. So that's the reason why you don't want to just eat constantly protein or be drinking protein shakes all day long. You want to give yourself some gaps in between and space that out. Now, multiple studies have shown that between 25 and 40 grams of protein is sufficient to maximise MPS. That's quite a big range, 25 to 40 grams. There's a few nuances we'll cover on that with protein quality a bit later on, but it gives you a ballpark number to work from, and let's sort of hone in and refine that a little bit more. So I prefer to use a number based on your weight, so it's relative to you. And that number is, I suggest that you aim for 0.4 grams of protein per kilo of body weight for every meal. So if you weigh 65 kilos, that would work out at 26 grams. And for an 80 kilo guy, that's 32 grams per meal. So doing that will get you sufficient protein to max out MPS in that sitting. And the current literature actually indicates that consuming assuming that's a mixed meal, it'll max MPS out in about 45 to 90 minutes, but it'll last for about a 3-hour period before dropping off. If you're having a protein shake or an amino acid supplement, then that tends to be a quicker time frame, so it only lasts for 2 hours and it peaks a little bit earlier. And then after that, muscle protein synthesis tends to fall off. So thinking that through, when it's falling off again, that's probably a good time to be eating the next meal and getting the next stimulus, next bout of MPS. So according to science and the research that's out there at the moment, about 4 to 6 servings of protein per day with 3 to 4 hours between each meal appears to be your best bet. That's because of that refractory nature I talked about earlier. So spacing things out 3 to 4 hours optimizes MPS within a 24-hour period. That's what the research is showing. And we also know 25 to 40 grams per meal should maximize muscle protein synthesis, or more specifically, about 0.4 grams per kilo of your body weight. So it's not just a case of stuffing protein in your face, you want to time it optimally. So how should we spread that through the day? Well, a really simple one is you could pick halfway between 25 and 40 grams, that range we've been talking about, which is 32.5 grams. And then you could divide your total requirements by that number to give you how many meals per day. So for example, a 75 kilo guy needing 2 grams per kilo, that's 150 grams per day. If he's having 32.5 grams per meal, then that actually works out 5 meals per day. Actually, I ran the numbers on this, and it's actually more like 4.62, but we round it up to 5 meals. So 5 meals across the course of the day, he'll be hitting his total protein well, and the frequency will be optimal to max out MPS. And that research, that approach is backed by research. Now, if you're eating, that frequency, and the science suggests 3 to 4 hours, I tend to just pick halfway between. Every 3.5 hours is a good compromise, and that's what I suggest most of my clients do. So that might look like 6:30 a.m. breakfast, a 10 o'clock second meal like a snack, a 1:30 lunch, then eat again at 5 o'clock, and then an 8:30 dinner. Now, that worked out at 5 meals and getting 32.5 grams per meal. We could think of it differently, and we could go, okay, we'll base our eating schedule on the 0.4 grams per kilo body weight recommendation that I talked about earlier. So if we use our same example, 75 kilo guy, we know he needs 150 grams a day, and we know that he needs to hit about 30 grams per serving to max out MPS. That's because 75 times 0.4 equals 30. Anyway, so knowing that, we can do some simple maths, and it calculates out how he should schedule his meal plan. And so you just divide 150, so the total, by the per meal basis, which is 30 grams per meal, and 5 meals. Simple. So it's a different method, but you come up with the same answer, whether you're just dividing the overall protein intake for the day by the middle range of 25 to 40 grams per serving, which is 32.5, or if you're going on that 0.4 grams per kilo, if you're dividing your overall needs, those numbers will almost certainly come out at practically the same meal frequency. So in this case, 5 meals a day. That's personally what I tend to do. I eat 5 meals a day. So we've established that spacing them relatively evenly through the day at about 3.5 hourly intervals is a good idea. Then when it comes to protein timing, the next consideration is moving on to that nutrient timing in relation to your training session, or as most people will probably think of it as that magic anabolic window. Anabolic windows had people slamming a shake within seconds of finishing their last set for years and years now, and as long as I've been in the gym, it's been the way you do things. So is that required? The short answer is no, it's not required. The long answer is it depends. So it depends on a few factors, but basically it depends on your nutrition pre and post gym session. Now, if you've consumed like a threshold dose of protein sufficient to max out MPS within a couple of hours of training, and you're going to do the same within a couple of hours after training, so say like a 5-hour overall window, then it's not really necessary to have a protein shake immediately upon finishing your training session. But if for whatever reason you weren't able to eat for several hours before training, or after a training session you can't eat, you're going straight into a meeting at work or whatever, then definitely suggest you get that shake in you straight away, probably with some carbs as well. So moving on now to protein quality. So protein quality really refers to how well the amino acid profile of a certain protein source matches the requirements of the body. How well it's digested, the bioavailability, essentially how well your body's going to use the given protein source. Now, muscle protein synthesis is stimulated or dependent to a large degree on the content of a meal and the protein quality, and specifically the amino acids within that meal. So there's 20 amino acids, and 9 of them can't be made by the body, and those ones are known as the essential amino acids. They're essential that you get them in from outside the body because your body can't create them. And it appears that eating sufficient quantities of the essential amino acids is key to your muscle building efforts. So as a result, you want protein sources which have a high content of essential amino acids, and we can kind of measure protein quality based on that. Now, of these essential amino acids, there's one known as leucine, which is also one of the 3 branched-chain amino acids, and that's got a lot of interest now because it's been shown to kickstart the mTOR pathway and essentially therefore kickstart the MPS process. So you want to make sure you have sufficient leucine per meal to get the mechanisms of muscle building underway. Essentially, it's like the ignition in the key in a car or whatever to get things started, get the engine started. So what do you need to get the muscle building engine started? Well, 2 to 3 grams of leucine seems to be sufficient per meal. And again, a bit like more overall protein isn't better, more leucine isn't better. Some studies they tried at giving people 8 grams in one serving and didn't have any additional benefits to having 2 to 3 grams. So you can get 2 to 3 grams of leucine pretty comfortably from that 25 to 40 gram overall source of protein, assuming you're eating whole sources or things that like whey protein. So whey protein, eggs, fish, meat. You're going to get sufficient leucine if you're eating between 25 and 40 grams worth of protein from those. It only really is a concern if you're a vegan or vegetarian and your protein's coming from non-meat sources, and then it may be something you want to consider supplementing or fortifying your meals with a leucine or an essential amino acid supplement. So just to review how you optimize your protein overall, the key takeaways are to consume 2 grams per kilo body weight, eat 4 to 6 meals a day, space the meals about 3 to 4 hours apart, have 0.4 grams per kilo per meal of protein, ensure there's at least 2 to 3 grams of leucine within each serving, and then you don't have to have a protein shake. It's not required. Only time it's really becomes essential is if you are unable to eat before or after your training session, and therefore that's a convenient and quick way to get some protein into your system. Okay, so that covers the key points of protein consumption to get you building the most muscle possible. If you put all those into practice, you'll be well on your way to maxing out your muscle protein synthesis and therefore building a bigger you.